Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today's speaker series. I'm Miriam Garreb, and I'm a first-year student at Harvard College studying government and economics, and a student ambassador for the Center of International Development at Harvard University. I'm looking forward to moderating today's discussion, answering, can social enterprises fill the market and public sector gaps in tough places? The format for today's event is a 20 to 25-minute presentation, followed by around 20 minutes of Q&A. Before we get started, I just want to mention a few housekeeping items. During the Q&A, you can submit questions directly in the chat. And we will also be recording today's session, and the video of this event will be available on our CID YouTube channel. Our next speaker series is on Friday, March 11th at our normal time of 12 p.m. Eastern with Sachit Balsari, an assistant professor in emergency medicine at Harvard Medical School, and Caroline Buckey, a professor of epidemiology at the Harvard School of Public Health. They will discuss data in crisis, rethinking disaster preparedness in the United States, and we hope you'll join us. Also, please save the date for March 2nd for a virtual panel discussion with Harvard experts on how to reimagine the future of work. But without further ado, I'd like to briefly introduce our speaker for today. Debbie Aung Din is the co-founder of Proximity Designs, a social business operating in Myanmar since 2004 that delivers affordable and innovative products and services for farm families living in poverty. A social entrepreneur with over 25 years of public and private sector experience in Asia, Debbie continues to lead the organization during the ever-changing political and economic landscape in Myanmar. She founded and grew Proximity under the closed-off military regime, negotiated with the Bush administration to deliver humanitarian aid after a major cyclone in 2008, and develop new products, services, and channels to scale and meet evolving consumer needs. Debbie has been engaged in design and economic research in Myanmar since 1995 and is one of Myanmar's leading rural development experts. She has an MA from Harvard University in Public Policy and Development Economics. And in 2012, she received awards from the Schwab Foundation and School World Forum for Social Entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for being here, Debbie, and over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you here, and I'm glad to be here. And thank you for coming. I'll share a little bit about what we do at Proximity and how we've scaled impact as a social business and what we're learning about working in a difficult environment. But to start us off, I'd like to ask all of you to answer a quick question for me. And if you could please use the chat feature to type in your off-the-cuff answers, that would be great, so that we can all see your ideas. So here's the question, Christine, can you tell me about a fantasy product that could really improve and change your life today? It doesn't exist yet and it's not in the market, but it would greatly make your life better. So what would it be? Can you please go ahead and just chat, put it in the chat box? And Miriam can read through some of the questions.
So our first respondent, Claire, said bike tires that will never flat. Like the avid bike rider. Farah said a machine that does all of the house chores for me. I need one of those too. That would be super, super useful. Abu Rahman said a self-deploying face mask. Very useful in this context. I always find myself like losing mine too and then need it on the spot. Jacob said something or someone to handle all of the left and right swipes for me. I'm curious for more details in regards to what, but we'll leave it at that for the time being.
Yeah, and so please continue to share whatever ideas you have, but yeah, thanks. And thanks for sharing those. But as you can see, yeah, I think, what we do in Myanmar is basically that, is to that our mission is to create innovative products and services that don't exist in the market or are being provided by the government, to basically improve the daily lives of farm families, and especially to reduce daily drudgery, and boost farm yields and their incomes. And our aspiration is to help millions of underserved small farm families grow more food, earn better incomes, and adapt to climate change. So when we first started in 2004, we spent a lot of time traveling to villages and rural areas and talking to hundreds of farmers. And like this woman here who told us that she would haul heavy watering cans on her back every day, 40 pounds a day, 40 pounds each side, for, 100 trips a day. And she had these hard and bulging calluses on her shoulders. And she'd said that, she'd be so tired at the end of the day at night that she would just collapse on the floor and not be able to even have the energy to even eat. And there were other farmers like him who were like this farmer who was getting water using a bamboo cantilever, and talk about time consuming. That is one bucket at a time. And he was saying how the most he could grow is a quarter acre of vegetables at this rate because he had hit his technological ceiling. So the crazy thing is he was using, technology from thousands of years ago, and as they used in Egypt. So when we saw that there are millions of farmers, at least 5 million small farm families, who are essentially the backbone of Myanmar's rural economy, they didn't have basic products and services. And we thought, gosh, there's got to be a better way. And how is it possible in this day and age? And it's unacceptable. Families are working day and night, very tired, and they can't feed themselves, and they can't put their kids in school past 4th grade. And they couldn't even invest in keeping their soils healthy and their crops healthy. So, and yet they're providing food for 80% of the population. And they just said, this is unacceptable. So we saw a huge opportunity to serve this single largest underserved market in Myanmar. There was basically major market failure and government failure and development aid failure to provide these basic products and services. Private companies, on one hand, they weren't interested in serving this market because, they just assume farmers don't have the willingness to pay or the money. And so they would focus on the cream of the crop farmers to sell their services. And meanwhile, government is nowhere to be found. In fact, for decades, farmers have experienced, public disinvestment and extraction from government. So farming in Myanmar is very labor intensive, and also has one of the lowest yields in Asia. If you compare with neighboring Thailand, the yields for paddy for 1 hectare is only like 4%, a fraction of Thailand's. And yet it takes 10 times more amount of labor in terms of days to grow it. So basically in 2009, my co-founder, Jim Taylor, who's also a Kennedy School alum, we both said, we moved our 2 school-age kids from Los Angeles to Myanmar. And we started a social enterprise that could address these public and market failures. And when we started, we said there are a few basic principles that we really felt strongly about based on our experience working in Cambodia, Indonesia, and Mississippi. And we said number 1 was that we wanted to redefine and reframe the relationship we had with the people we were trying to help. So we wanted to treat them as customers and not charity recipients or beneficiaries. And I'd worked for the NGOs and also worked on advisory projects for the World Bank and UN development agencies. And I just didn't want that kind of relationship where it wasn't so transparent. And it's also about a power dynamic where, customers have the power and choice. They make the choice whether what you're providing and tell you whether what you're providing is valuable to them or not. And you get immediate feedback and accountability through the market. And in terms of aid, there was very little aid coming into the country at the time, about $4 per capita, one of the lowest in the world. So we needed to have a model that was financially sustainable and not use solely rely on donor funding. And we needed to grow our own sources of income and have our earned revenue. And so we basically had very limited grants, and we targeted those subsidies on doing R&D for products and services. And we needed a model that could scale quickly because the problem is huge. And so we couldn't just be focusing like the NGO models on a few villages. So we started in 2004 by introducing these foot-operated treadle pumps that you see here to replace that daily drudgery of hauling water on your shoulders. And we brought in, 40 of them from India. And this was part of the appropriate technology movement. They were definitely an improvement. They were, double the productivity of watering cans and much more ergonomic. Women like them. It's like a Stairmaster. And so, but we found that they were poorly designed. They were clunky, and the engineers who designed them were engineers. They weren't really designers, and they didn't focus on the end user. And so we found that they needed to be redesigned based on the Myanmar context and the needs and aspirations of our customers. And at the same time, at that period, in the design community, in Europe and in the US, there was a movement of the need to design for the other 90%. Why should the top 10% of the world be privileged to benefit from good design because they can pay for it? Why not use that same rigorous design and creative attention to solve everyday problems of poor people? And so we basically built our own design lab, and product designers over the years developed them. And we partnered with the Stanford D School for several years, as well as professional designers, design firms like Studio D and IDEO. So in terms of design, we spent a lot of time just getting feedback from our customers and doing deep dives to really understand their needs and aspirations, and trying to put ourselves in their shoes based on empathy and deep knowledge and being proximate to people. And thus our name, Proximity Designs. It's really hard to solve problems when you're not proximate. And as a company, we want to make sure that our products are well designed and researched before they hit the market. And of course, when you're creating, it's super important to have good design, especially when you're creating for people who are living on a knife edge, like most of our customers do. They just can't afford to have bad design because it makes your life so much harder. And let me give you an example of bad design. And this one is, in 2008, a huge cyclone hit the Irrawaddy Delta, the Rice Bowl of Myanmar, and devastated villages and livestock and farms, and 150,000 people died. Well, one relief agency brought in these life straws, and some of you may be familiar with them, but to help people get clean drinking water. Now, if I'd like you to look at how this woman is using it and ask yourself, would you want to get down in the muddy pond and drink water like this when you're thirsty? I don't think so. So, I think that's not designed with the person in mind. So through the years, what we've done is we've tried to keep up with all the changing needs of farm families, and and adapt our product and service offerings. And we've established 3 key pillars or areas of irrigation technologies, agronomy, advice, and finance. And so today we provide critical solutions in all of these areas from different stages of the cropping cycle, depending on the gaps in the market from government also. Currently, we sell a whole suite of irrigation products and also provide soil health testing, rolling out the first of its kind in Myanmar. And we also sell trichoderma, which is a biofungicide, and that really helps roots grow and plants grow healthy. And our agronomy practices are basically to help, like, best fit for farmers. They're affordable and they boost yield. And we have an on-call service to help them diagnose and treat pests and diseases. And we have a farm finance function, also a for-profit entity that lends loans, gives affordable loans to farmers based on their cash flow, which is when they repay at harvest and not like the traditional microfinance. So we deliver these solutions and these products through many channels, and a farmer can access them directly through our field force of sales reps and crop advisors and loan officers who relate to farmers directly. And we also sell our irrigation products through agro-dealer shops, participating in agro-dealer shops throughout the country and at our branches. And more recently, we've expanded into digital channels, especially with the pandemic and the coup happening and a lot of remote and having to relate to farmers remotely. So we're offering, we're doing telesales and teleagronomy, much like telehealth has really taken off during the pandemic here in the States. So we offer free practices through a chatbot as well. We have 1.5 million subscribers, and we have Viber communities where farmers are grouped into various interests. So in terms of our impact, we track sales and also do regular surveys of our farmers to make sure that we're meeting our mission. Our products and services are designed for rapid payback and affordability, and ultimately to boost farm productivity and incomes. And so farmers, by using our product and service, can expand their acreage, diversify into higher value products, and they can restore and maintain the health of their soils and use water resources more efficiently, save money, and just be more resilient against climate change and pests and disease attacks. And so we measure all this and keep track of it. And since we started, we've served over 1.2 million households. And that average net income increase has been about $350, which for most farmers, they're making about $600 a year, which is considerable. And we have been our customers are across 10,000 villages and 6 major growing zones. And we estimate about $750 million pumped into the rural economy because of this. And when we first started, you talk about the whole ecosystem and whether social enterprises can make a difference. Well, I'd say that when we first started, there was no market for irrigation products, no supply, and also farm finance didn't exist. But we've played a major role in making the markets for these. And today, there are about 20 microfinance providers. There's several irrigation companies who are selling. And some of these companies, there's about 2 or 3 who've actually copied our products. And our products are open source, and which is fine. We don't mind when they copy our products. And so we've shown that there's a willingness to pay and there's demand, and it's a viable market to serve these small farmers, millions of these small farmers. So in terms of, and we've also done landscape studies, deep dives, a more qualitative, contribution to the sector, so that people understand, have empathy, and understand what farmers are going through, the whole sector. So, and of course, we recognize that technology and agronomy services and farm finance is not enough, that the macro environment is super important, and constrains, what can be done to reduce poverty. And so we've, since 2009, for several years, we partnered with the Harvard Ash Center to do macroeconomic and policy research. And this has happened, especially when there's openings with leadership in the country, and our ability to contribute this kind of analysis has really helped in natural resource sharing, in topics like natural resource sharing, rural finance, and energy. So today, I guess you could say that in terms of what's happened in Myanmar, we've been caught up in, as one of our donors said, multi-car collision or pileup. And there's been multiple crises on top. There's first the COVID, pandemic crisis that everyone, especially in a failing, where we have a collapsing health system, it's been really quite terrible. And on top of that, we had a year ago the political crisis with a coup, a military takeover a year ago, and that has caused violence and disruption and basically state failure. And economically, the fallout from all of this has been really, really dramatic. The Chat local currency has depreciated 30%. The economy has contracted about 20%. There's been a drying up of foreign investment, and poverty rates have doubled in the country. And last but not least, environmentally, this is not on anybody's radar now because of the other crises, but there is an environmental crisis in terms of farmers being on the front lines of climate change and having to deal every day with soil degradation and unpredictable flooding, violent flooding, and new pests and disease, and all of this caused by climate change. They're super vulnerable. So how are we navigating these crises? I think from the early days, we've really, when we first started the organization, we prioritized culture and values and said, Myanmar really needs to have a society that's more based on trust. So that was really important as we built the organization, to have that foundation of trust so that we can work easily and flexibly across the country. And that has really paid off for these in navigating these crises. And the crisis has been for the whole country one of eroding trust as well. We've also invested a lot over the years in building up local talent and leadership, and that has really paid off because they've stepped up in the crisis, and they have ownership and own the mission. And we've stayed really focused on our mission. I think farmers are seeing that, there's even fewer people to rely on for supporting them. And so they see us as still there and standing. And we've tried to stay proximate, and that's a real challenge, despite all the, remote work and disruption. We've been creative in trying to, create new channels to relate to farmers. And finally, I'd just like to end by saying, this farmer is Unyum Wei. He grows chili, corn, and onions, and on 3 acres. And he just recently was dreaming about a product, his fantasy product. That was because he had all this trouble with fungus on his roots, infesting his root systems. And he was looking for something that he was not damaging his soils because, he was using chemicals before, and they were getting more and more expensive in the market, doubling and tripling. So he was looking for something that was a more organic and natural product, and he actually found it with trichoderma. One of our crop advisors introduced it to him, and he immediately bought 21 packets and tried it out. And in a few weeks, he could, after applying it, he could see the improvement in his chili plants, and especially noticed that he had earthworms growing again, and a lot of earthworms in his soil. And before, all the other chemical products he used killed off the worms in his soil. And he said his chilies harvest was a success. The chilies tasted better than before and less bitter. And he did really well. And so this season, he was keen to get an early start. And so he was going to buy more trichoderma. And he walked, miles to the nearest town to get a bus and travel 18 miles to our branch office to buy these packets. And here's his proud purchase of 30 packets. And he's basically saying, I feel pretty confident and reassured that even in this crisis that I can continue to feed my family and keep my kids in school. And so, Myanmar is going through tremendous upheaval and even greater market failure and government failure, aid failure. And it's tough, but it's customers like these who continue to show great resilience and inspire us to stand in the gap as a social business. So thanks very much. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Debbie, so much. That was an incredibly insightful presentation on how social enterprises can fill in both like market and government failures, and how development enterprises can navigate their work in the midst of a lot of macro level challenges. Now we're going to open up for Q&A. And so everyone who has a question can go ahead and add their question to the chat. But just to get the ball rolling, I actually had a question myself. So you mentioned as of date how Proximity Enterprises has served 1.2 million small farming households. And that is an incredible number. But when beginning in 2004, right, how did you guys, I guess, like navigate the climate and the circumstances to initially develop that trust, right, in that community? Because you mentioned how, right, for poor farmers, a bad design, right, is incredibly threatening to their livelihood. So how did you convince them, right, that proximity designs can provide, right, the right design for you? And maybe like what lessons did you learn from methods that maybe didn't work as well to build trust?
Well, if you think of any product, the adoption curve is like a hockey stick, whether it's cell phones in the States or whatever product that's new or technology. It takes a while. And so those early adopters are really important. You first have the people who, will adopt any technology or a little bit less risk averse and willing to adopt. And so we focused on, every village has those kind of farmers, just like in the States, the people who adopt technology first and take that risk. And so there were more well-off farmers or they are more progressive. And so those are the ones who were interested and were willing to take the risk in trying it out. So then it's basically the adoption curve, goes steeper when their neighbors see it and see the effect after one season, how it's really boosted their incomes and their yields, and they're doing better And so when they can see with their own eyes, what their neighbors are doing and benefiting from, then the word of mouth really spreads. And so I think for us, it's been, we track also, that kind of word of mouth net promoter score, whether, have you recommended it to, others? And invariably they've recommended to 8 other people by word of mouth. And so that's how it catches on. But yeah, in the beginning, when you're introducing a technology, it is difficult. So you want to talk to the early, the progressive people who are interested in new ideas and less risk averse, and as in any country. And I think it's about, building trust. And, a lot of our staff are from the rural areas and rural towns, so they know these people. And so they're not like some city slicker coming in and trying to sell you something. So that helps. And I think over time, the word of mouth spreads. And when farmers can see with their own eyes after one season, what it's done to their fields and crops, then it takes off much faster. Building trust, I think, we try to really train our sales force to say, you really have to have empathy, and it's not about just selling, but how do you relate to the farmer and the customer with empathy so that they feel like you understand them. And that builds trust. And you're not just coming in like trying to sell fertilizer, fly by night company. You are there always. And when there's pests and disease attacks, here's my number and here's an on-call number you can call. And through the years, that's how you build trust and you build a brand. And our brand is very recognized now throughout the country.
Yeah, thank you so much. Our first question is from Abu Rahman. And he's asking, how has Proximity Designs dealt with the issue of crop residue burning, especially with rice, causing environmental pollution and soil degradation in many farming communities?
Yeah, we're actually doing R&D on this straw burning thing process and trying to, we're still in the R&D stage where we are trying to have them not do that, not do burning. And right now it's very early stage, starting off with a few farmers trying a different method where they don't burn it. And that will be a difficult thing, but that's on our radar in our pipeline to document the benefits to the farmer economically and financially, and so that we can sell this and promote this.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And so Sharbaz has a question. In rural communities, access to finance is an issue. And given that, are these products affordable for the rural people, and how they manage finance to get them?
Yeah, I mean, our irrigation products and most of our products are super affordable. They're designed for that. So we do a lot of research on the willingness to pay and what is the price point that's needed. And so they run like, $50 or so, when most things in the market run, $300 and so it has to be radically affordable. So we designed for that. And it has to have a rapid payback in one season, say 3-4 months growing season. You would have doubled your income so that you can easily pay back, get payback from that return. And so, in the earlier years, we tried to provide credit just for this small amount, but it was really problematic because our field force, we're trying to sell and also collect. It was just administratively very tough. Which is why we started a farm finance separate unit, where they handle loans and collections. So we did see the need to have farm finance that is designed for farmers' cash flow, because we saw the microfinance organizations weren't doing that. They were just doing the urban petty traders, mode of collecting every 2 weeks, which is not what the farmers want for their cash flow. So, which is why we started an institution.
Okay. And I think our last question that we have time for today is from Jonathan, who's wondering how proximity designs initiates contact with farmers and how farmers can then initiate also contact with proximity designs. Are these, or does proximity designs retain in-person extension agents, work with COOPs, government structures, digital channels, etc.?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we have multi-channels for delivery. We first started off in the early years with a direct field force, and we still have that, where we have sales reps visiting villages, doing road shows with our technologies. We have crop advisors who visit villages and loan officers. But on top of that, a farmer can access our products in towns through participating agro dealers. We have about 150 dealer shops, family-run shops, who sell our products. And then when it comes to practices, new practices, they can now, on digital channels, they can go to our chatbot and find out all about these new practices and access videos. And then when they have a pest and disease attack, we have an online on-call service where they can call us and we walk through it, and they show us their, a picture of their pest or disease, their plants, and we can help them diagnose it and treat it. So there's multiple ways now that farmers want to relate to us, and we try to keep up with that.
Thank you so much. And I actually think we have time for one more. And it's from Jacob, who was curious about the first 12 to 24 months of the organization. So what challenge did proximity designs face as you guys got started, and what worked well for you in those early stages?
Yeah, I mean, Myanmar was under U.S. sanctions, and we're a U.S. nonprofit, so we had to get all this exemption, and to be able to say, yeah, we're just trying to help poor people here in Myanmar with some technology, and so we had to do that side. And then on the military government side, it was the height of the dictatorship. We had to just say, look, these are just some pumps. We're not doing anything political. We're not advocating anything. These are really tangible pumps that will help people's lives. And I think that helped, having a very tangible product that you could just show the minister or show people and say, yeah, it's very innocuous. It's very not harmful or not political. And so I think that helped a lot. Just being able to show tangibly your products, and people could understand, oh yeah, this makes sense. So that was important. I think it's really tempting in the early days when you're starting off an organization when you're cash strapped, to really go for all kinds of money and jump through hoops for donors. And we just said, we're not going to do that. We really feel like it's important to treat people as customers. We have our own income, because a lot of our donors in those days, we had two, in fact, said, oh, you should just give them away. We said, no, that's not our model. We can't scale that way. And, and then they said, oh, can you put in, donated by so-and-so on your pumps and give them away free? And, we turned down $90,000 that month and said, no, we're not going to do that. This is not how we're going to operate. And so I think it was really important not to get distracted by donors who want to do it their way, and to really know, what is important.
Yeah.
And I would say that we've been very, very fortunate to have donors who are aligned through the years. who are social impact donors who give us unrestricted money, which is like a dream, to say, okay, you run your enterprise like this. I'm not going to tell you, you got to do this line item, spend it this way. You're running an enterprise, a business, so I'm not going to tell you to how to run it. You just show me the impact and measure it and show me your impact.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer our questions and for this great discussion. And thank you to our audience today for coming. I'd like to remind everyone again that our next speaker series is on Friday, March 11th at our normal time of 12 p.m. Eastern with Sachit Balsari, an assistant professor in emergency medicine at Harvard Medical School, and Caroline Buckey, a professor of epidemiology at the Harvard School of Public Health. And they will be discussing data in crisis, rethinking disaster preparedness in the United States. We hope you guys will join us, and thanks again, everyone.